Luann, where are you? There you are. In my home church, we sang Just As I Am after sermons just about every week, almost every service. And so y'all started singing that thing, and I thought, have I preached already? I can see she's still delirious from that illness. It is so wonderful to have you back, though, Luann. And honestly, I was going to say, in all seriousness, having that song prior to the Lord's Supper, let me hear it again, like for the very first time, because man, I can tune that song out in a hurry. And that's a terrible thing, but it is true. And boy, that was wonderful. We have a new theme this year, 2024. One Life is our theme. Last year it was Pray Without Ceasing. And this year it's one life. You have one life. One. And for me, at least, that truth raises the question, how are you going to spend your one life? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with the days that God has given you? You can be very intentional about it, or you can just sort of sit back and let life come at you and react to everything that happens, whatever it brings. One life. One. Now, it doesn't have to be heavy. It's not going to be all the time, because we're going to celebrate one life in a number of ways throughout the year, and we're really excited about that, celebrating one life, but it can be sobering, and I think it ought to be sobering. I have one life. That's it. One. The truth makes me think about all the time that we let get by, the time that we waste. When I was thinking about this message some time back, I Googled top time wasters. And in 0.6 of a second, I got 4,580,000 hits. Bang! Just like that. True, I did. One link took me to an article called 12 Time Wasters That Suck Your Productivity While You're at Work. Naturally, I clicked it. I had gone through 5 of those. Chatty coworkers, checking emails, social media, multitasking, and of course, clickbait. And that's when the irony hit me. And I thought, wait a minute. You got me, okay? I don't want to be doing this. It is so easy to waste time. And I think typically, honestly, we're just so used to it. We're not even aware of it. We're really not even aware that we're doing it. It's so easy, not just to waste time, but to waste a life. To waste a life. Listen to me, church. Are you listening? I want you to hear this. You don't have a life to waste. You don't have a life to waste. You're not going to get another chance at this life. You can be born again, but it's still going to be this life. This life. The life you're living right now is not going to go on forever. I want you to think about the fact that we're not going to be here forever like this, which is a concept that exactly 0% of us want to consider. But it is true. Writer of the book of Hebrews reminds us each person is destined to die once, and after that, the judgment. One death for one life. You need to make the most of your life right now. I love you, and I hope you know this to be true. But we need to stop messing around with God. We need to stop messing around with this church business. We need to stop messing around with our walk with Christ. We just need to stop messing around, because one day you're going to look Him squarely in the eye. You, God, face to face. So be careful how you live. This is Paul writing in Ephesians 5, his letter to the church at Ephesus. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to unpack this verse, each phrase of this verse, phrase by phrase, and look at it and see what it is that God has for your one life, for my one life. You ready? There it is again. Be careful how you live. If you like to follow along with the older translations, it's going to say the word walk instead of live. Be careful how you walk. It's a metaphor for living. It comes from the Greek word peripateo, which means to walk about, right? And in the Bible, your walk is your everyday, moment by moment way of living. It's how you carry yourself. It's the life that you live. Maybe you've heard people say, it's usually in church situations, stuff like that. They'll ask you, how's your walk with the Lord? How's your walk with Christ? And other than the fact that it sounds so super religious, like some sort of insider, righteous speak or something, there's nothing wrong with that phrase. How's your walk with God? Simply means how you live. It can be godly or ungodly, but it's your walk, it's your life. I often ask a similar question. I ask people, some of you, you'll remember I've asked you, how's it going with you and Jesus? Same thing. Same sort of idea. It's your walk. Are you walking? Are you living in ways that honor God? Are you keeping your life clean? I mean, look at how you live. Just do some sort of self-assessment. I'm not the one to assess you. You assess you. Look at your life. I mean, self-critique just a little bit. Are you keeping your house clean day to day? I mean, when the doorbell rings, are you scampering around trying to get the curlers out of your hair? Put something on besides pajamas, pick up the trash off the, I don't want anybody to see how it is that I am living. I mean, anybody can clean up the house for a party, right? Anybody can do that. But do you keep the house clean every day, normal way of living? What needs to be cleaned up in your house? C.S. Lewis once said, the way to find rats in your basement. I love that. The way to find rats in your basement is not to go to the door, clear your throat, jiggle the doorknob, open the door, turn on the lights, stomp down the steps. You're not going to catch the rats that way. What you do is you sneak up in the dark and you're quiet and then you leap out. Aha! You don't really catch rats that way. They're way too, but C.S. Lewis wrote it, so I thought we'd talk about it. It's a great example, though. Your walk is how you live. What somebody would see in your life if they snuck up on you, turned on the lights real quick, caught you off guard. That's your walk. That's your real life. How are you living day in, day out? We have to walk carefully, the Bible says. We got to walk carefully. For one thing, people are watching you, watching me. They're watching the church. And we either bring credit or discredit to God. We either honor Him with the way we live or we dishonor Him with the way we live. God's wisdom should be on display in your life for a watching world. You need to walk carefully. But also you need to walk carefully. Paul will remind us here in another verse, verse 16, these are evil days. These are evil days. You have an enemy, the devil. Don't ever forget it. Whose one goal is to destroy you, to mess up that glory of God that you were designed to bring the Lord. So be careful, be intentional, pay attention to how you live. Living in this fallen world, really, it's like walking through the jungle where everything in there wants to eat you except for the things that just want to kill you. That's the enemy. That's Satan. That's the one who's seeking to undermine you. Walk carefully. Friends, do not underestimate your enemy. You do so to your own peril. There are moral, ethical, relational landmines that can blow you up. Be careful how you walk and don't live like fools. Who's the fool? Well, David tells us a couple times, right? The fool has said in his heart, there's no God. There is no God. And I know we always think when we read that, it's sort of natural to think of atheists, people who don't believe in God. And that, I think, is what David's getting at, but it doesn't necessarily mean an atheist. It means anybody. Listen, church, this is for us. Anybody who doesn't think that God has an absolute claim on their life. Anybody who thinks they don't have to live by God's standard. Anybody who thinks I can live by this standard, but not by that standard. Because then you've removed God's claim on your life. He's not Lord over your life. He's Lord over the portion that you allow Him to be Lord over in your life. This includes the people who believe there is a God, but who live as though there is not. This is hard stuff to see on the board here at church, on the screen. There is no God. Hard words. But I put it up here because I want everybody to ask, is this me? I mean, is this me? Am I living maybe in some dark, hidden corner of my heart? If somebody were to turn on the lights and really see, would they see that I'm living as though there is no God? You're probably familiar with the story in the Bible of the rich fool. Remember him? He was a farmer, really successful, all kinds of huge crops. And he's like, oh, this is amazing. What a tremendous yield. And he's wealthy. And what am I going to do with all this stuff? And he thinks, I got it. I'm going to build bigger barns. He's building bigger barns for this tremendous crop. And God said to the rich farmer, you fool. This night your soul is required of you. Tonight you die. Tonight we're face to face. Don't live like fools. And I bet this guy, this rich farmer, we often call him the rich fool. I bet he was a good guy. I don't know, it doesn't say, but it doesn't say he was evil. I bet we liked him. He was successful for sure. We pretended to like him, I mean, he was successful. He was rich. He may have been a loyal church member for all I know. I bet he considered himself blessed by all the wonderful things in his life. But in his walk, there was a denial, a day-to-day denial. He lived as though either God didn't exist or he just didn't matter very much. And it amounts to the same thing. I got some stuff here that I want to share with you. A lot of us in our walk with God, we're a little bit like this rich farmer. We don't give very much. And I'm not even talking money. I know that's hard to believe. We just like you get a little bit of the zest off this thing, just a little bit of the peeling. That's what we give God from our lives. And you can't really see this, but you can see it building up there, I bet. This stuff coming out. That's about what God, that's a part of our lives that we give to God, This is what we let God control. Just some of the scraps, some of the scrapings of our lives, but not our whole life. The rest of our life, we just sort of live as though God doesn't exist, right? We just give Him just a little bit, off the top. That's what we give God, or maybe you're a little more devoted to God than that. That you do more than just give God the zest. You decide you're gonna give God a slice, right? And you cut a slice for God, and you give God the slice. You give that's for God, and that's not bad. You're thinking, we give God this, and I'm not talking money. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about bowing before Him as the Lord. It's offering God just a little bit of me, but there are parts of me. You know what? In fact, the biggest part of me, hands off. But I'll follow you right here. I'll do this much of what you say. That happens. We do that sometimes. A friend of mine from high school passed away this past year. He was a little older than me, a couple of years. He was my big brother's really good friend, but I knew him. And we played ball and stuff together. And good guy. I got a text from somebody last year that he had died, and it was on Facebook and all that stuff. And I don't know for sure. I think he was raised in a church. I don't know if he had a relationship with God. If he did, from the things I knew about his life, it seems like he maybe turned from that a long time ago. Heard the memorial, had no mention of God, no mention of Christ, no mention of resurrection. A lot of good memories, some laughter, some moments of happiness. And I don't know much about his life, honestly, because I haven't seen him in many years. And I'm definitely not going to judge the guy, but it did cause me to think. It caused me to think. What would somebody say? I mean, if you stood before the judge of all humanity with no commitment to him, no plan for eternity, no investment of your life into God, only a wasted life, a life you held back from God in your hands, I mean, what would you say? I mean, do you offer God just a few peelings of your life? Just kind of the outer layer of you? Or maybe a kind of a generous slice, of your life? Don't live like fools. Don't live as though God doesn't exist or He's not very important. Rather, live like those who are wise. Like people who have wisdom. What does it mean to be wise? Charles Spurgeon, the famous preacher from long ago, said, "Wisdom is the right use of knowledge. To know is not to be wise." Many people know a great deal and are all the greater fools for it. There is no fool so great as a knowing fool. No, he says, living wisely is applying what we know about God to our right now life. It's taking what you know about God and applying it to your life. It's more about doing than it is knowing. It involves knowing, but it's not knowing. It's following through with what you know. Are you applying what you know, what God has called you to do? Or are you treating God as though He doesn't exist or should stand over in the corner and be quiet until you need Him? I mean, it's one thing to know what's right, but are we living the way that is right? Um, Wise people understand that we're dealing with the living God here. And what He wants from you, what He requires of me, is everything that we are and everything that we have. He wants to empty us. He wants us to offer ourselves to Him. And hope I don't pinch my fingers right here. Yeah, and me too. It's like, we get this. Oh, I better have the cup under there because then it'll get messy if I don't. We want to offer our lives. We want to give God all that we are and all that we have. And I would lean on this, but I'm not sure about this table. And yes, I'm getting juice in there. And I'm going to be very modest and pour just a little bit here into my cup. And I'm dying to taste it. It's delicious. It's really good. It's like I was made for this. It's like this is the way my life is supposed to be. Not held back, not those scrapings of my life, not even a generous slice of my life. He wants to drain every drop of who I am, what He made me to be for His glory. And that fits me because I was made for it. Wise people know they have one life and they give the entirety of that one life to God. Shows up in three ways. They make sure this, three things. The first one is they make sure they belong to Him. Wise people belong to Him. And I would just ask you this question: do you belong to Him? Have you given your life to Christ? Have you confessed your faith in Jesus before others? Have you been baptized into Christ? I mean, have you followed through in your commitment? Maybe you believe, or you're hesitant, or you're afraid, or whatever. Have you surrendered control of your life to Him? Wise people understand I'm not my own, I'm His. And I belong to Him. But also, it's not just they belong to Him, they become like Him. And this is really the goal of life, is to become like Him. It's not to be saved and go to heaven. That's a byproduct of the very best thing. The very best thing is to become like Him. When we talked last week, to be with Him. His presence is the great victory. But we want to become like God. And I don't mean, almighty or anything, but I mean holy, godly, with a small g. He wants to transform us. Yeah, He accepts us as we are, but He loves us way too much to let us stay that way. God changed me from my self-focus, wanting bigger barns, protecting my life, holding it back for myself, and help me to be others-focused, serving, giving, caring, always asking, Lord, what's the next step you want me to take to yield my life to you? It's not just belonging to Him or becoming like Him, but it's also bowing to Him. We're natural born worshipers, I should say, natural created worshipers. God made us to worship. And in the absence of worshiping God, we will worship something or someone. And that's why we have to be so intentional. That's why the writer of Hebrews warns the church, forsake not the assembling of yourselves. When the church comes together to worship, be there. Make it a point to be there every time. Every time. Unless you're sick, out of town, whatever, can't be there. I mean, be faithful and worship. And it's more than just being at church, right? It's worshiping by the way you live. It's saying that, God, you are worth the time. You are worth the effort. You are worth the struggle. You're worth whatever it takes to know you. Oh, Lord, you are worthy. Tell Him with song. Tell Him with praise. Tell Him with your talk, and tell Him with your walk. Make the most of every opportunity. Wise people understand opportunity does not last forever. And when you're young, that's kind of lost on you because you feel like it does. You feel like it's just going to go on forever, and it's so far away that you don't have to worry. The Greeks had a statue, and the name of the statue was Opportunity. And then it showed up in a lot of places, but one of the ancient cities, that statue was kind of large, and it stood right in the center of the city square. It was chiseled, designed by a man named Lysippus, and it had wings on the feet and was on a large base, and the statue was of a man, and he was bald in the back of his head. He had a lock of hair coming out the front, a forelock they called it, and it was strange. But underneath that statue, chiseled in the marble on the base, was this dialogue: Who made thee? Lysippus made me. What is thy name? Opportunity. Why hast thou wings on thy feet, that I may fly away swiftly? Why hast thou a forelock, that men may seize me when I come? Why art thou bald in back? Because when I am gone by, none can lay hold of me. Opportunity. The believer who is wise knows to make the most of every opportunity. Now listen to me. I want to show you something that's kind of interesting. You notice Paul says, walk like those who are wise, verse 15. And then immediately it talks about redeeming the times, the old translations say. Making the most of every opportunity. Why does Paul connect those two? Because you and I are foolish with opportunity, with time, more than we're foolish with any other thing. We don't pay attention to it. I've always had time. I'll always have more. Thou fool. Tonight your soul is required of you. Killing time, wasting time, hanging around, scrolling, posting. Paul's got something to say to us here, like Moses in Psalm 90, where he said, "So teach us to number our days." Why? He says that we might gain a heart of wisdom. Wisdom numbers the days. Wisdom notes the limited time. Wisdom buys the opportunity. Wisdom walks the narrow path, sees an opportunity for evil and says, "No, I won't be a fool." Wisdom sees the opportunity for good and grasps it quickly before the opportunity goes by. This is not a someday thing. I mean, it's not. It's now. There are 7 days in the week, and someday is not one of them. Friends, we need to make the most of every opportunity right now. Now, if you're 20 years old or younger, I know you think I'm never going to be 60 or 70 or 80, and if I do, it'll be 150 years from now. You're going to be surprised, my friend. You're going to be real surprised. Don't close your eyes, because you're going to get there while you're asleep. And you'll be surprised, and you'll say, how did my life go by so fast? Listen, the time to make sure that your life matters, that it counts, that you're not wasting it, is right now. Live in the now so you don't look back with regrets and say, "Oh man, I wish I could. I wish, you know." And I know some of you, you hear the word opportunity. You know, opportunity, grasping opportunity, taking advantage of the opportunity. And you think, my days for opportunity are past, okay? Listen, I'm long in the tooth. My time for opportunity, that's in the past. But listen, I'm convinced from the Bible that when you feel like you have nothing left to give, there's nothing left to squeeze out. I've just got nothing left. God still sees something great in your life and for your life. He still sees a great cause for you, no matter where you are. If you hear my voice, God still gives you reason to live and grow and minister and care and pray and praise. I've known friends, I have friends who have and are suffering through very, very difficult times. Tough setbacks. Everything from abandonment to disease, to devastating injuries, loss of a child. And I've seen God take these friends in their what looked like a real fragile condition and do amazing things beyond their capacity, beyond our capacity. It's God stuff. And maybe that's you. Maybe you're hurting right now and you're tired and you're struggling and you're weary and it's just tough. And it's really difficult to hear God challenge you to walk a certain way and to make the most of every opportunity. Maybe God's calling you to trust Him for something that is missionally miraculous. Maybe something bigger, something bolder, something better. You know, like those cardboard sermons. You ever seen those cardboard sermons where the people hold up these statements on a piece of cardboard? Be a whole bunch of them, like usually in a line, shoulder to shoulder, you know, and they'll hold up a cardboard sign, and one of them will hold up one that says something like addicted or homeless, you know, filled with self-loathing, lonely, depressed, not sure why, angry, stuff like that, you know. And then, you know, once everybody's seen the signs, they've turned them all up, and you see what they say, and everybody sort of receives the full impact of those things, then they start to flip the signs over. And you see descriptions of their life since they've come to know Christ, and it'll be set free. Beloved child, family member, joyful, forgiven and forgiving. Well, there was one woman whose front side of her card said diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. Then she was joined by an older man standing there beside her, and he lifted up his card and it said, doctor who diagnosed her, atheist. Then he flipped his cardboard over. And it says, through her joy and suffering, came to know Christ. Then she flipped hers over. And it said, worth it. Worth it. Now, the situation, she didn't volunteer for that. I'm pretty sure. She didn't volunteer for the stage 4 breast cancer. But when the opportunity came in that struggle, she took hold of it. Make the most of every opportunity. I don't know if you've heard of the name Kefa Simpangi. Anybody? Pastor, way back in the 70s, maybe 80s also, in Uganda, during the dark days of Idi Amin and just a murderous regime. And this pastor, ministering to poor children, which was every child he ever met, and starting churches and pastoring, and he was on the run most of that time. When Amin was doing his worst years, he's on the run, trying to stay alive, and it was miraculous, they believe, and it sounds like it, that he was able to escape the sword there. And eventually, they found their way to Philadelphia. Some years later, some people invited them to come and were able to take care of them. They'd given away everything they had. Their lives were really on the line. After they were in Philadelphia for a few days, Kefa's wife said to him, she said, tomorrow I'm going to buy the children some clothes. And then she paused, and they both just burst into tears. They said it was the first time in more than 4 years either of them had ever said the word tomorrow. Tomorrow. You don't know if you have one. You do not know. Well, what you have is today, now. So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. And for the love of God, won't you please make the most of every opportunity. Father, we thank you for Jesus. We thank you for his love for us. We thank you that when the time was right, you sent your Son, born of the Virgin, perfect life, the innocent dying for the guilty, Christ dying for us, not so much to demonstrate our worth, but to demonstrate and to share his love and his grace. Father, help us to respond to this good news like people who are wise, who see the time, who hear the ticking clock, and who want to give their entire life to you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.